midnight.
When I was 22, I moved into an old boarding house on the edge of town. The rent was cheap, too cheap, and that should have been my first warning. The house was massive, built in the early 1900s, its red brick walls stained with age, its roof sagging like tired shoulders. The crooked hallways twisted and turned, painted with peeling wallpaper, and the staircases groaned under the weight of time, each step echoing as if someone unseen followed behind. The landlord, a quiet, gray-haired woman named Mrs. Halloway, greeted me with a stiff smile. She smelled faintly of mothballs and incense, her thin fingers clutching a heavy brass key. She showed me to room 6 at the very end of the second-floor hallway. The door was old, its frame scratched deeply, as if nails or knives had tried to carve their way out. The key itself was old-fashioned, cold and heavy in my hand, with grooves so worn I wondered how many tenants before me had held it. As she handed it to me, she whispered almost under her breath, "Don't open the door across from yours, no matter what you hear." Her eyes lingered on mine for a second too long, filled with something between fear and guilt. Before I could ask, she turned sharply and walked away, her footsteps fading down the hall. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The boarding house was alive with noises, pipes groaning, wood cracking, faint whispers of conversations from other rooms. But around midnight, I heard something else. A soft knock, not on my door, but the door across from mine. I froze, every muscle locked tight. Another knock followed, slow, hollow. Then a whisper seeped through the old wood. "Let me in." The voice was dry, brittle, like leaves crushed underfoot. My chest tightened. I remembered the landlord's warning. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would burst. I pulled the blanket to my chin, forcing myself to stay silent. But the knocking grew louder, harder, more desperate. Fists slamming against the wood. The whisper turned to a growl that rattled the air. My eyes watered from fear, but I never moved. Then, silence. The next morning, I stumbled downstairs, pale and shaking. At the kitchen table, an older tenant named Arthur sipped black coffee, his eyes sunken with years of sleepless nights. When I mentioned the door across from mine, his face drained of color. "No one's rented that room in decades," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Don't talk about it. Don't look at it. Don't listen." I pressed him, but he shook his head violently. "You'll only make it worse." On the third night, curiosity poisoned me. I crept into the hallway, the air colder there than anywhere else. My bare feet tingled against the warped wooden floorboards. The door across from mine loomed like a black hole, its handle glinting faintly under the weak hallway bulb. I leaned close, pressing my ear against it. At first, silence. Then a faint scratching, like fingernails dragging slowly across the floor inside. And then, my name, whispered, drawn out, in a woman's voice. My blood ran cold. I stumbled back, my shoulder slamming into my own door. My hands fumbled for my key. That's when I saw it. The doorknob across the hall was turning, slow, deliberate. The air thickened, pressing against my chest. I rushed into my room, locked the door, shoved a chair against it. Then I saw it, a shadow creeping under the crack of the door, stretching across the floor like liquid darkness, curling toward my bed. It pulsed, moved, reached. I whispered prayers, clutched the bedsheet to my face, and kept my eyes shut until morning. When the sun rose, the shadow was gone. But etched into the floor, right in front of my bed, were fresh claw marks, deep, jagged, raw, like something had crawled right up to where I slept. The following nights only grew worse. The whispers came more often, always after midnight. Sometimes it was my name. Sometimes it was a laugh, soft, broken, echoing through the wood. Other nights, I heard footsteps pacing slowly back and forth across the hall, stopping just outside my door. One night, I woke to find my door ajar. I always locked it, but the chair I'd wedged under the knob was pushed aside, as if someone had come in. I found a long strand of black hair on my pillow. Desperate, I confronted Mrs. Halloway, the landlord. Her hands shook as she folded laundry, avoiding my eyes. "Room 7 was hers," she whispered. "A tenant. 1952. She was murdered in that very room by the man she loved. They found her body under the bed, but her face, she stopped, her voice breaking. Her face was gone. They said she still lingers, waiting for someone to open the door. Why not seal the room? I asked, trembling. Her eyes glistened. We did. Over and over. It doesn't matter. The door always comes back. On my 6th night, the storm came. Rain lashed against the house. Thunder shook the floor. Around 3 a.m., the power went out, plunging everything into blackness. That's when I heard it. The doorknob across the hall turning, rattling violently. Then banging, like fists slamming into wood. My name screamed, again and again, from a throat that didn't sound human anymore. And then, the door across the hall opened. I couldn't see her fully, only the outline. A woman, thin and broken, hair hanging in wet strands, face pale and hollow. Her eyes, bottomless voids. She stood in the doorway, staring straight at me, though the hall was pitch black. Then she stepped forward. I don't remember running. I don't remember leaving my room. I only remember Arthur shaking me awake outside on the front porch, rain soaking us both. He said he'd heard me screaming. I left the house that morning. But before I left town, I searched the library archives. I found the article. Her name was Evelyn Moore. Murdered by a jealous tenant in 1952. Strangled. Her body hidden in the wardrobe. They said the police found the room drenched in blood, the walls scratched with her fingernails. The killer vanished without a trace. No one had stayed across from that room for long. Some vanished. Some went mad. The article ended with a line that chills me still. Evelyn's room remains locked. But sometimes, late at night, tenants swear they hear her knocking, asking to be let in. And when someone finally opens the door, she never lets them leave.